All right, hello and welcome back. This is Eric, and we are looking at my computational science video series. So the goal today is to quickly look into Python and how we use variables, types, and printing in the Python programming language. Now I have CLine loaded up here. I've just created a quick sample program. Now in Python, we've already seen a statement like print, hello, this program rocks, because that's something cool for a program to say, and we've been able to run this and we get that printed to the screen. So printing a simple statement like this is pretty easy. Now in Python we have a very easy way to deal with variables. We can say something like x equals 1 and we've created the variable x, or we can say y equals 2.2 and we've created the variable y, or we can even come back and we can say that x equals hello programmers, right? And we've now changed x from being a number 1 to being this string, hello programmers. So we can put statements in like print x and then print x, and we'll see that we were able to change everything about the nature of the variable x. So in the Python programming language, we have a lot of power and flexibility in how we work with variables. And in fact, it's very easy to destroy a variable and change the type of a variable. That kind of thing is almost impossible to do in a language like C++. It is not. They're built for different functionality, and in Python you can just, variables are something you can just sort of throw around and use however you want. So printing in Python, very easy. A couple things that I think are important to point out is if you do want to say x plus y, we're going to get something very different than if we say x is hello programmers and y is yo you all. Oops. Then if we say x plus y, then we're going to get a very different thing being printed here. We can see 1 plus 2.2 gives us 3.2, and then here you can say hello programmers followed by yo you all at the bottom. So the way addition works is going to be different for different types. So in Python, we might want to know the type of a variable. And if we're in the interpreter, we can just type type of x. But because we're not in the interpreter, we're running this as a program where you have to put a print statement in front of it. I just want to remind people, when you are using print statements in Python 3.5, you do need to use parentheses. And if you look up code online, remember, if the code is missing a parenthesis, it was probably written for an older version of Python, Python 2 point whatever, and they didn't need the print statement back, or they didn't need the parentheses for a print statement back then, but we do need it now, so be sure to include it. All right, so now we can say print the type of x. So x is of type class string, and up here, before we did that, x was an integer. Okay. And then we could also do type of x plus y. When we add an integer and a float together, I did x plus ys, hence my error. So yep, you can see we can also do a float. So we can get the type of x, the type of y. No, come on, why? Oh, all right. I think I'm trying to do Control S to save, and it's accidentally doing that. Okay, so we can see x is an integer, y is a float, and after we create the string, we then have x being a string. All right, so that's just kind of a quick way to display types. I also want to point out that in Python, there is a way to just sort of explicitly state, hey, I want to make sure that this is an integer or this is a float. Now, an easy way to force something to be an int or a float, if you, hold on, I switched my language to Japanese apparently. Okay, we'll go back to, so int 1 will force x to be an integer. So now if we run our program, okay, everything comes out the same. But if we don't want it to be an integer, we could say float 1, and then we'll get the output for x to be float and float. So there is a way we can kind of force the type to be integers or floats. It's a little bit more complicated if you want to have control over types, but we can say things like if type of x equals type of y, print x and y are the same type. Now you may notice for this particular statement I used double quotes, and that's something interesting. If you want to create strings, we can create a string with a single quote, or we can create a string with double quotes, and it really doesn't make that huge of a difference in Python. I typically try to use single quotes in my Python programs just because that's the standard I've been following, but I've seen both in use. There is a third type of string where they will use a triple quote, and a triple quote allows you to basically have multi-line strings. So with the triple quote, we now can have something where I can say print SSS, and that's going to print our triple quoted multi-line string. Alright, so now you can see here triple allows multi-line strings. It came up there. Alright, now as we're getting on towards stuff, I want to also show that we can play around with our variables, and we can do things like 1e minus 4, and we can use our exponential notation for defining floating point numbers. We can also do things like create complex numbers. We can say that c is equal to 1 plus 5j. Oops. And then we can say d is equal to 2 minus 2j. And then we can do our arithmetic, like, print c plus, or c times d, and this will print the complex, the result of complex multiplication of the numbers c and d. So if we look at this, we're able to use the 1e minus 4 to give us our exponential notation as a quick way to write this. We can also use, so we have exponential notation, which naturally prints. Then we have complex arithmetic, which works pretty naturally, it works very naturally and intuitively as well. It is a little tricky because in Python we don't always know the type, and we might find ourselves using type of C a lot. We might just be saying, hey, what type of variable is C? Let me just print that to the screen. Print type C. And then you would have to be like, oh yeah, I can see here that C is of type complex. So we often have to, just build in some checks to make sure that we're dealing with the right kind of type. In general, I think Python has a very quick learning curve. However, I have found in certain programs that I've tried to write, this flexibility of types can cause some confusion and problems. But I think this is a pretty quick general overview of how we print, how we use variables, and how we can use types in Python. So thank you for your time, and keep on coding.